Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this subject talk for the Politics and International Relations courses at Leicester. I'm basically going to be giving you a brief introduction to what we offer, how we teach it, and some of the career options you might have afterwards. Necessarily, because we've got a relatively short time, I'm mostly going to be focusing on the combination of politics and international relations. But if you've looked at our website and our course offering, you know that you can do just politics on its own, you can do just international relations on its own, politics and economics, history and politics, all these various combinations. But looking at politics and international relations together probably gives you the best flavor of the sorts of things we offer. After hearing from me, I'm going to hand over to our student ambassadors for 10 minutes. So they're going to tell you a little bit about the student experience and how they find studying at Leicester. And then at the end, we'll have a few minutes for questions and answers as well. So if you do think of anything, do just put it in the chat. And both I and our student ambassadors will endeavour to get that answered. I suppose one of the big questions you're probably interested in answering is, why would you want to do this degree at Leicester, or why would you want to study at Leicester more broadly? I think one of the really nice things about the university is we tend to be sort of what I think of as a medium-sized university. So you're going to get a good kind of, medium-sized city town kind of life with all the hustle and bustle, diversity, dynamism, social life and things that goes along with that, without kind of being lost in a mega city. So obviously some of the universities in the UK are in very, very large cities, London, Manchester, Birmingham, and so on, in similarly large universities, which have much bigger classes than we do and bigger course sizes than we do. If you're the kind of student that, doesn't really want to get lost in that, you want to have a slightly more intimate relationship with the people who are teaching you and your peers in class and so on, then Leicester's a really good kind of size university to do that. So in politics and IR any given year, the very, very highest number of students we take is 200. And even that would be a good year. So usually it's between 120 and 200, which is considerably smaller than, say, somewhere like Birmingham, Nottingham, Manchester, so on, that can take up to sort of 400, 500 students in the incoming freshers year. So you'll be in, lecture theatres where we can accommodate you all. You'll know your lecturers by first name. Hopefully you'll know your classmates by first name, and that can make the learning experience much better for particular types of learners who feel like that's a more comfortable environment. What you can tell from the slides as well, Leicester, despite being a smaller size, is kind of ranked up there with Russell Group institutions. So you can see from last year's rankings, we're the 27th best university in the UK, 30th in the Guardian University Guide, very high sustainability sort of ranking, 94% employability for DHLE for that year. I think that's actually gone up to 96 now as well. So that's people who are within work within 6 months of graduating or are doing further study. So, really, really good outcomes on that front. And I think probably really important to students at the moment, given the cost of living crisis, is that we're the 9th most affordable city in the UK, which, given the fact that student loans are not particularly generous in the grants that they give students for living expenses, that makes a big difference to students who don't want to have to be working part-time jobs all the time to be able to make university life work for them. And on top of that, the university has invested huge sums of money on campus, £500 million invested on campus recently. So if you do come and visit us, you'll see things like the Freeman's Common, which is a completely new development with new teaching facilities and also new student accommodation that's brand new, kind of state of the art. Very, very good quality accommodation, good quality student union stuff as well. Cafes and social spaces and so on. So in that sense, Leicester's kind of ticking a lot of boxes as far as a place you might want to live as a student as well as study. So to come to our actual course offering, it might be worth considering, what politics actually is. I think we have a kind of general assumption of what it is from reading the newspapers, watching the TV. I think most students who arrive think of it in terms of, parliamentary debates, voting, what the government's doing and that kind of thing. And certainly that's how politics used to be regarded up until the kind of 1960s and 70s. But since then, it's taken a much more kind of all-embracing turn in terms of what we research and what we teach our students. So you might say anywhere where power works in our daily lives can be political, and politics can be the study of those power relations. So a lot of kind of modern political research is still about institutions that we might think of as traditional and kind of elite, like parliament and so on. The voting process, polling, all this kind of stuff. but also lots of things on, feminism in politics, and the racial aspect of politics, the gendered aspect of politics, various forms of economic inequality and how that influences politics, animal rights, all this kind of very challenge-led stuff that the 21st century is dealing with. That's all part of what political research and teaching is now. So if you have an opinion about pretty much anything in your day-to-day life that involves power or discrepancies of power, we'll probably touch on it in some way in a politics degree. International relations is a bit trickier, because I think it's one of those things that people don't necessarily come across in their daily lives that often. It's partly foreign relations, but it's looking at foreign relations in a very particular way. So, like politics used to have a very traditional way of studying, international relations also had a very traditional way of studying up until the middle of the 20th century. And that was basically to take the state as the smallest form of international politics. So what international relations is how states kind of interact with each other, and how the dynamics of those interactions are shaped by power. And the general kind of what we call realist assumption, which is a bit of a loaded term, was that states with the most power are the ones who kind of get to dominate the international system. But of course, since then, much like politics, the way that power operates has been broken down again. So in any international relations degree, you might study things like, how does the views of the people who actually run the state influence international relations? How does the size of the state influence international relations? So clearly a country like Sweden won't have the same tools at its kind of disposal as the United States, but is still shaping international relations. So does it use human rights discourse more? Does it use climate justice discourse more to kind of influence foreign relations? Whereas the US might kind of rely on its economy and its military and that kind of thing. And also, just as politics is becoming more critical and challenge-led, so is international relations. So you have scholars who look at, the role of race in international relations, the role of kind of legacies of colonialism, the role of the international economy in international relations, and how that shapes inequalities in power dynamics, and so on. So again, it's a very, very kind of diverse field that now touches upon lots of different aspects of how states interact with each other, and is actually interested in the people within those states as well. So how refugees cross borders and this kind of thing, not just taking the state as the very smallest actor that research is interested in. So you probably already know this. I don't need to preach to the choir in terms of the major international events that are going on now in the Middle East, in Ukraine, and so on. The United States with the upcoming election, major rising powers in Asia, and so on. It's a really, really important time to understand both politics and international relations. It's shaping not just world events, but the business environment, the future of what this country is going to look like in terms of how we're going to deal with climate catastrophe politically, how we're going to deal with the migrant crises that come with climate change politically, and all that sort of thing, how we're going to deal with being outside of the European Union, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the content of the course, this is stuff that's going to be directly relevant to anyone in the world of work, right? Your employers are going to be dealing with these things as much as politicians are or journalists are. On top of that, there's the hard and soft skills the degree gives you. So lots of independent work skills, lots of analytical skills about having to crunch information, digest it, and then relay it to an audience in understandable terms. That's exactly what you'll be doing with your bosses and your line managers if you go to work in the private or the public sector. Might not be exactly the same content, but those skills of delivering information in an understandable way, analysing it yourself, all that kind of stuff is what politics and IR degree teaches you. And I think from my perspective, some of the soft skills, the global mindset's really important. So if you read some of the things that some employers write for newspapers now, they often say things like, the hard skills are good, but actually, if you gave us an additional year when you joined us for work, we could also teach you the hard skills. What we can't teach you is, do you understand what the perspective a Chinese businessman might come from if you're doing business with a big Chinese corporation? Because China has a kind of political history that also affects its economic worldview. India has a political history that affects its economic worldview, similarly Africa, and so on. And they say lots of the people who come to work for us from much more vocational degrees, if you do economics or you do something like that, maths, physics, they don't have that global mindset. They don't have the sorts of skills that politics, international relations, history, that kind of stuff teaches you about the rest of the world. And that's something we're really, really lacking in our employees. So those kinds of soft skills, kind of cultural sensitivities are really, really increasingly valued by employers in an increasingly globalized marketplace and economy. if you've done your research online, I mean, you'll probably know that politics and IR is a really long established discipline at Leicester. So we've been teaching it since the 1940s. So there's a really long pedigree. So in addition to all those new interesting things that we're teaching about contemporary global challenges, there is a sort of legacy of teaching it at Leicester alongside similar social science degrees like sociology that are really, really well regarded. The research is kind of considered prestigious. The teaching standards are considered prestigious. We have links with the politics and international relations establishment because of our long-standing research of the topic. So you will often get, occasionally visitors from the civil service or parliament coming onto campus, or you going to them to better understand how they do politics. And that's one of the advantages of going to a department that has these kind of long-standing links. The other thing is, the city, as I've mentioned before, is a really, really nice size, really friendly. Lots of diversity, lots of great sort of cuisine and nightlife, a bit of an alternative scene in the cinema and that kind of stuff, and music scene as well. But it's also really well connected. So, if you, after 2 years of studying here, you decide you want to go to a slightly bigger city for a night out, London, Birmingham and so on are only an hour on the train, Nottingham's up the road and so on. It's one of the really nice things about being slap bang in the Midlands and with a railway station, that actually you are really, really well connected. So just another one of those reasons that makes Leicester a really kind of interesting place to study if you're a student. As I said, I'm mostly going to focus on politics, international relations, but you can see here the other courses we do offer. If you are looking at the website, just be slightly careful with the difference between the top 7 and the bottom 3. The top 7 are exactly 50-50 split degrees. So obviously politics, international relations are on their own, but the other joint degrees are 50-50 split, so 50% politics, 50% IR, 50% IR, 50% history, and so on. That means that the number of modules and the number of credits you do for each half of that should be equal. You can mix and match a little bit, so if you ask when you're accepted on the degree, you might be able to do 60-40 and so on, but generally it should be a relatively even split. With the 3 at the bottom, they're slightly different. So law with politics is actually just a law degree, and you're allowed to do 1 module of politics a semester. So it's actually mostly with the law department. You apply via the law department and so on. It's not a politics kind of run degree, and it's not 50-50. Similarly with modern and contemporary history and modern languages with politics, the weighting can be quite different. So with modern languages with politics, you can do 75% modern languages and 25% politics. So it's, again, a slightly different weighting. And with those degrees, they're not owned by the politics and international relations department. So you would actually be applying to the modern languages department or applying to the law department with the relevant qualifications in order to do those degrees. Just to give you a very sort of basic introduction to the structures in years 1, 2, and 3. Generally in year 1 is when you have the core modules that are absolutely essential in both politics and IR, because the assumption we have is that most students haven't studied it. So some of them have done it at college level. It could be in A level, it could be in other systems of secondary education assessments, but at least 50%, if not slightly more, actually haven't studied politics at that level. So the core modules are kind of intended to bring you up to speed with the core concepts, processes, institutions of politics and IR before you then get into slightly more specialist modules. And that might involve things like introduction to politics, key concepts in international relations, American politics, that kind of stuff. And then you have 4 optional modules from a range of choices that you can choose to make up the rest of your credits. Similarly, in year 2, there's a few more optional modules, a few more core modules. Similar sort of thing, but now there's some more research-oriented modules that you have to complete in order to get you up to speed for your 3rd year dissertation, which is a big independent research project. And the idea is that you need the independent research skills to be able to do that. And so you spend a lot of year 2 kind of thinking about that. But again, there's enough optionality there that you'll be able to pick and choose modules as well that take your fancy from staff specialisms. And then final year is kind of the buffet. The dissertation is the key core module that you have to do, and you'll spend all year working on that with a dissertation supervisor who'll help you with it. But you have 4 optional modules from staff specialisms to choose from. And by that stage, you probably will have developed certain interests in the politics and IR degrees that you know exactly who you want to go for. Or you may have even decided that, particular staff members' style of teaching is something that really appeals to you. So often you pick a staff member associated with a particular module and their research specialism and so on. So it's a really kind of nice conclusion to the degree, because it's completely open-ended in terms of how you want to cobble that final year together. So some of the big modules we do, I mean, this is not a comprehensive list at all, but some of the ones that I think particularly interest students, and maybe ones that they're not always aware of. So with a politics and international relations degree, you might well expect parliamentary studies, you might well expect the Cold War, nuclear weapons, pretty standard politics and IR topics. But there are some on there that are kind of new, sort of challenge-oriented, that are led by many new members of staff as well. So race and political theory is my third-year specialism. Space politics is the specialism of that chap on the bottom left there, kind of peeking his head round. One of the world's leading kind of academics on space politics and what international relations in space means for the future. He works very closely with the Space Centre in Leicester, so one of his modules then allows you to take a trip to the Space Centre, so that's good fun for students. And then other things you can see that are kind of critically oriented as well. So feminism, violence and non-violence in civil disobedience, migration, refugees, all that kind of stuff. Animal rights, really important issue around whether animals deserve the same or some of the same rights that human beings do when it comes to inflicting suffering on them and eating meat and that kind of thing. So really interesting choices that are kind of out of the loop of stuff that you may expect to see on TV or radio that we're not always exposed to, but are always really important things that the 21st century is, or influence the 21st century is having on our conceptions of politics. So another thing, I imagine you're very interested in styles of learning. One of the nice things is that we don't really have too many timed exams anymore. I think there's 3 for certain modules across the entire course. So it's a very small number across 3 years, and some of those are also in optional modules, so you don't even really have to do them. The rest of it tends to be coursework, portfolio work, in-class presentations, all that kind of stuff that gives you a good long while to do it before you have to submit it. Also gives you the opportunity to get feedback from staff before you submit it, so there's not this much of a kind of stressed timed exam environment. The other thing I think Leicester's very good at is the way we teach. So you have lectures which are a bit like this, me talking to you when you're making notes and that sort of thing. But actually a lot more interactive stuff goes on in tutorials and seminars which follow the lectures later on in the week. So it might be that one session I ask you to read something and then we discuss it in class, but another session might be a debate that we've organised and I've separated you up into teams and given you material to prepare for the debate. Another class might be someone doing a role play as a particular political figure and then the rest of the class kind of evaluating that. So it's able to get lots of different learning styles into the classroom, because not everyone necessarily is, content with reading lots and lots of books and then kind of just talking about it. People learn in different ways. And this kind of dynamic way of constructive learning in the classroom is a really nice way for different types of learners to get the most out of the environment. And as I mentioned before, we get guest speakers for certain modules. There are field trips associated with certain modules. So it's not all a kind of, classroom-based types of activity. In terms of the amount of time per week you'll be spending learning, it's actually not as much as I think most applicants think. So in any given week, you will actually only have 9 hours of face-to-face teaching time, usually 3 hours associated with each module. You do 3 modules in each semester. Outside of that, what you'll have is kind of independent learning. You'll be asked to read certain things. You'll be asked to prepare a debate, as I said. You might be working on an assignment. So your face-to-face contact time is not really 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's actually spread out in a fairly manageable way. So if you're commuting, it works quite well. If you've got a part-time job, it works quite well. If you've got childcare commitments, it's also can work quite well. So hopefully it's not too much of a pressured environment. And there you go, that's the sort of breakdown you get with the particular modules. The only really big piece of work is that 10,000 word dissertation at the end of the year. Otherwise, assignment essays tend to be between 1,500 and 2,000 words. In third year, they might be 2,500 words. But the dissertation you have about a year to work on, and you'll start working on it, or thinking about it at least, in the summer of your second year. So, you have plenty of lead-in time. You'll be assigned a specialist from the department who will kind of talk to you every 2 weeks about progress, help you find the materials you need, help you with your research methodologies, read draft chapters, all that kind of thing. So you'll be really well supported. Another aspect of support is personal tutoring. So you may have heard of this. It's the kind of pastoral element of university life to make sure you're looked after outside of the academic side of things. If you're struggling with accommodation, you may have certain learning challenges that you bring with you that you're struggling with, or you might have health issues that you're struggling with. All that kind of stuff, your personal tutor is there to help you work through and make sure you're getting the most out of university life as possible. And so you'll be assigned one from the moment you arrive on campus, essentially, usually within the first couple of days of the first week of term. Ideally, you will have that personal tutor throughout all of an academic year, and in a really ideal scenario across all 3 academic years. Obviously, there are some interruptions insofar as a personal tutor might go on research leave or that sort of thing, in which case you'll be assigned another one. But usually you have a kind of person who knows you from the beginning and can see you through your university career. And in first year, we're required to get in touch with you at least every couple of weeks. If you don't then want to see your personal tutor, that's fine, but the option is always there. We always drop you an email to say, if you fancy a knock on my door to have a chat about anything, please feel free to pop by. It's completely confidential, so it's a bit like a relationship with a doctor or lawyer. If your parents ring up about something, however worried they might be, however angry they might be, we're not actually allowed to share information with them without your express permission. So it's a really kind of good way to get stuff off your chest if you want to, and that kind of thing. The Leicester Award, which is kind of an employability scheme, is embedded in our courses. So at the moment, it's embedded in the student experience workshops. And it's not compulsory, but if you choose to submit the assignments for that, you come away with a Leicester Award certificate, which you can show to employers as a way of saying, I've made an effort to make my academic skills transferable into professional skills. So it has things around CV writing, how you can use your hard skills outside of the classroom, and that kind of thing as well. So you're probably all doing a politics and IR degree with the hope of getting a job afterwards. If you're doing it just for general interest, that's fantastic. But 99% of students obviously will be doing it with the idea of a career in mind. And obviously most students don't go to become MPs and political advisors and that kind of thing. Some do, but obviously most people won't be looking to do that. So there's a huge range of things that our students go on to do, from the civil service and kind of the wider kind of government sphere, but also management, finance, consultancy, teaching, the law, marketing, all of these kinds of public and private sector things that don't really require a vocational degree. So as long as you don't want to be an engineer or a doctor or that kind of thing, politics and IR keeps pretty much all of your doors open. And what employers are interested in are the skills you're coming away with those degrees, which we've talked about a bit, and what grade you got. So if politics and IR is something that you're passionate about, it's something that interests you, then by all means you should go for it, because it's the 2, 1 and first that employers are looking for after you graduate, as a sign that you're a committed learner, you have the ability to think for yourself, you're good at organising yourself, and so on. And it's a much better option than choosing a degree that sounds like it will give you a direct job straight afterwards, but you might struggle to actually be passionate about it for 3 years, and so you end up getting a slightly subpar grade than what you would have got in a degree you actually enjoyed. Nope, don't know when that happened. We've got some of our, oh sorry, it's overlaying it in kind of a weird way there. We've got some of the jobs that our students went into. So marketing, international political advisor, senior policy advisor for the cabinet, quite senior positions in the civil service and the private sector. And you can see here some of the brands that they've gone to work for. So big public sector institutions like the NHS, Teach First and so on, but also things like JP Morgan, the Department for International Trade, lots of NGOs. So lots of our international relations students like to work for things like Oxfam, Amnesty International, United Nations, all that kind of thing. So the world's really your oyster. There's no limit on what the degree can offer you outside of the vocational jobs that I mentioned before. Study abroad's a really kind of nice aspect of life at Leicester. We actually have a really wide range of places you can go, given the fact that we're a medium-sized departments, and it's something that a minority of students do. But if you want to take a year out between your second and final years to go to a university outside of the UK to study there for a year and just come back, it's a really wonderful opportunity to broaden your horizons. It's only pass fail, so you don't have to worry about getting a kind of super duper grade in a new country. You can just kind of settle in, get to grips with things, and do as well as you can. And these are just some of the choices. So if you speak to the study abroad office, they'll tell you the full range of places we have. But in addition to these, there are places in Latin America, East Asia. I think there's even one in South Africa now, and many, many more in Europe. So there's a really wide range of places you can go if you fancy dipping your toe in a non-UK environment for a part of your degree study. So I'll hand over now to our student ambassadors who tell you a little bit about their experience at Leicester. And again, if you have any questions for them, please do save them till the end and put them in the chat. And they'll be very happy to answer them. Also, if you've got questions for me, I'll be really happy to answer them afterwards as well. So Reid and Ellie, over to you.
Yeah, it's always the hard part. It's like, who talks first? I suppose I'll go first, actually, since I spoke first. So in terms of like what I want to say, really, and is that I've really enjoyed my time at Leicester, you know, and I think the reason I've enjoyed it is because it's lived up to my expectations, you know. When I came here, one of the things that really attracted me to it, to be honest, was the module choices, as Vic kind of talked about. You know, some universities that I went to, you didn't get to pick any modules at all. You got to pick them in third year, which isn't too great. As someone who only likes some parts of politics and doesn't like parts of others, it was really nice to be able to, you know, jump into the degree. And within my, you know, second semester, I was already being in modules that I had chosen because I was interested in them. So if you've got like a specific thing, you're like, oh, I'd really like to study that, you know, you can choose to study that, because if you look at the modules, you know, there's a module for almost everything, you know, that you can think of. So that's what really attracted me to Leicester as well. You know, like a lot of the politics stuff I looked at other universities was very like, you know, it was European focused, you know, it was really focused on, you know, European politics, politics of Europe, UK democracy, which is all stuff I'm interested in, don't get me wrong. But, you know, there's also other things you could study here. You know, there's politics of all kinds of different countries that I've been able to study by going to Leicester. So that's another thing that I really did like about it as well. And what I will say is, because I also studied abroad, which is a great scheme, as Vic also mentioned, so I can give a bit of insight into that as well, which is another reason I wanted to go to Leicester, because there was such an array of places. You know, I went to the US, for example, I went to Virginia, which not a lot of universities seem to offer. That was the one place I knew that, okay, I really wanted to go to the US. And I looked around at several universities I couldn't really find anywhere, but Leicester had so many different places, including the US, so that's why I went. And it was something that was really worth doing, because not only is study abroad kind of cost effective, you know, that's the biggest concern with study abroad. Oh, seems to have gone dark. Oh, there you go. These lights on a motion sensor, you know. But yeah, study abroad is the cost really that turns a lot of people off. But actually, when you get out to the nitty gritty of cost, you know, like you get access to your maintenance loans you normally would. On top of that, you get access to a touring grant scheme. So when I went, I had almost I had the full maintenance loan and had the full touring grant scheme, which was almost about 19 grand or so. It's that more than covers flights, accommodations, and so on, anything else. And even if you don't get the grant scheme, Student Finance England does cover your flights. So either way, it's definitely very affordable to do. It helps you get better grades in your third and final year, obviously, because you've had more experience writing things. That's also very beneficial. And at least for me, it was, you know, my favorite year of university so far, just because, you know, I got to do something I never thought I could do and live in another country, and it's such a good opportunity to be able to do that. And I think the final reason that Leicester's so great, to be honest, is just that, you know, it's got great students' union, great societies. You know, there's societies, everything. If you go on the university website, you'll be very surprised at the amount of societies you can find out there. You know, stuff that you'd expect from, you know, a debating society to like a surf club. I don't know where they surf, to be honest, but, you know, the fact that they're doing it, it shows the ingenuity of Leicester students, I suppose. So, yeah, I've really enjoyed my time at Leicester. It's got great societies. The study abroad is really unique. I love the module choices. So the three great reasons right there, I'd say.
Yeah, to build on what Reid said, I think that the choices of modules at Leicester are great. It really helps you narrow down what you want to do your dissertation on. And like this, I was really worried about doing my dissertation when I first started uni. I was like, there's no way I could write 10,000 words. But obviously, with the support from your dissertation supervisor, it does help. They're very on it to make sure you're doing your work, so you're not getting to the end of the year and you've got loads to do. I think with Leicester as well, it's nice because it's not massive. Like, you can get from one end of the city to the other in quite a short amount of time. You don't need to leave the city centre, that everything is in there. Obviously, there's loads of accommodation, so like loads of ways to meet different people. And I also think as well, obviously, finishing my undergrad at Leicester, they were very helpful to help me move on and almost help me, push me in the direction of doing a postgrad. I don't think I would have done it if my dissertation supervisor hadn't have like shown me and opened the doors to like what else I could learn, kind of thing.
No, I think I definitely agree on the smallness point, especially. You know, it's really vital because one of my friends goes to Manchester and they have to pay so like 400 or whatever for a bus pass, you know, every few weeks, compared to here at the moment, where obviously Leicester is free and you can walk around. And then also obviously, you know every single member of staff here, you know, in the politics department, the staff members who taught me like a year ago or 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago in my, you know, my first year, who still remember me now and still talk to me when I see them in the corridor. And that's not something you get at a lot of universities. I know some universities in the UK, I'm not going to name names, that do teach their students sometimes via Zoom lessons because they've just got so many students they can't fit them all in one room. And that's not great. And it means lecturers don't know their students, you don't know your lecturer, but knowing your lecturer is so important. I mean, I've been able to do work on my dissertation just because I knew some of the lecturers who did work on like gender studies and having able to talk to them and be like, oh, you remember me from my classes? Could you give me any insights into this topic? And that's been super valuable. So I definitely agree.
Great, thanks guys. Are there any questions from any of our visitors that you'd like to ask either me or our student ambassadors? Feel free to put them in the chat. In the meantime, guys, I mean, do you want to talk very briefly about how you think first year was for you at uni? I mean, at Leicester, was it a big step change from A-level, or did you find it relatively straightforward?
I mean, my experience is probably quite different than a lot of people coming into this because I went through like a BTEC route. I did a health and social care BTEC. So although I didn't have any, so in some ways I didn't have any experience in history and politics. I didn't even do it at GCSE. So I had no academic experience coming into it, and I found it quite easy to understand. You know, I could jump straight in. You know, the course is obviously designed for, so it's course is designed for both beginners and people who know loads, and then too, so you know, so it's so everyone really. So I found it really easy to jump in, despite having not studied it before.
Yeah, I think I agree with Reed there. Even though coming from, I did politics and government, I think it was called, at A-level, I didn't think I needed that to get through the first year. And obviously the support, like the workshops and stuff they put on in first year for like academic writing styles, so obviously it's very different from college, or like referencing and stuff. And obviously the library have the academic centre where you can go and get help with your writing. But I also think as well, because you've got smaller groups, that attention from the lecturers is more, like you get more of it because they don't have so many people to see, and then that obviously helps in your writing and everything like that because you can send off plans and stuff.
Oh, I think you're muted, Vic.
Just realised I was muted. I was just thinking with this year's first years, I mean, we had an unusually big group for this first year. It was about 180, but I think we've done a really good job of making sure they're sort of well looked after, and that the introductory modules are not kind of too strenuous. Even so, I run the first big introduction to politics module in year one. That, you know, the reading for each week seminar is only one item, so it's not overburdening people, but it's saying, just can you please read those 20 pages as closely as possible so you have some insights on them. Whereas I remember when I was at uni, you got sort of like 5 things to read and it was just too much, and you could barely say, you know, one thing about any one of them. So I think in that way, you know, teaching's become pretty sensitive to you know, the best way to actually gradually sort of introduce students to university life.
No, I'd agree. I mean,
yeah.
I think one of the most valuable things that Leicester does, I don't know how widespread it is in other universities. It definitely wasn't when I studied abroad in other universities. I know the US does not do this. Is that, you know, the first year is, you know, it's pass or fail. You know, it's not, you know, your final grade is determined by what you do in your second year and in your third year, which, you know, it's really stress-free first year, which is really good because, you know, it means that you can kind of treat the assignments, you know, almost like you can treat them to kind of figure out like an experiment almost in terms of, you know, what to do, how to get used to academic writing. You're not thrown in immediately into the deep end, and if you mess up first year, you can't come back from it. No, of course you can come back, because, you know, all you need to do is pass, which is really easy to do. And then when you get into second year, then you can really hit the ground running because you'll have figured out what to do. So, you know, the first year at Leicester is really good in terms of just getting you good to study in second year properly and get into it, you know, because you can make mistakes. And once, you know, I remember really stressing out about that. And as soon as I was told it was pass or fail, like there was like a weight lifted off me. And then I, you know, my mindset was always, okay, let's just figure out how these essays work. And, you know, regardless of the grade, I'll have learned something that I can take forward. That was really useful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably sounds like a pretty standard student sort of experience at Leicester.
Mm.
I mean, would you guys, I mean, Ellie, I know you've gone on to MA study and so on. I mean, and you talked about the support there was for that. I mean, for the careers side of things, I mean, if you are then thinking about a potential career with your postgraduate degree as well as your undergraduate degree, I mean, do you find the university has the resources necessary to kind of look into that?
Yeah. Do you want to go, Ellie?
Yeah. So obviously they helped me. They sent me loads of links when I graduated. You join the, I think it's called the alumni. So you still have access to everything, even though I'm obviously still a student at Leicester. Even if you're not, you still have access to all of this career service. And like, I think it's every term they do an event. And obviously the careers department are constantly sending emails of like websites to look at. There's a lot of interns out there, like internships out there, and I found a lot of internships before I applied for my master's. You didn't need any experience, even if it was almost to allow you to gain that experience in the workplace. If you didn't do, say, a year in industry or something, you've still got a chance of getting a place on these like London company internships without, just to get the kind of experience that will then help you get into the workplace. I think it's useful to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why Leicester Career Service used to, I think it won an award at some point very recently, and it's because it's super good. As someone who was struggling to figure out exactly what to do when they graduated, which for me is no, it's not too long, let's say that much. I went to a careers meeting about 3 months ago, and my head was everywhere. I was like, so many different ideas, and after that meeting, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So they're really good at talking you through, okay, you've got these ideas. Which ones are feasible? Which ones do you really, really want to do? What should you be doing next in terms of next steps? And they're really good at directing you to, know what you want to do next. Even if you don't know, they were telling me, oh, here's a website where you can enter like key things that you like doing, and it will find jobs for you. So they're really good. Even if you have no idea, like unlike me, who had like a whole list, they can help you find stuff and know what you like. So even if you don't know, they can probably help you know by the end. So they're super useful, and they're also super useful, I'd say, because studying at Leicester, you get a lot of career experience. Not just through the degree you obviously get, but there's a lot of opportunities here at Leicester to do things. There's lots of part-time work that the university offers. There's lots of summer internships. I mean, every year at Leicester, I've done a summer internship of some sort. I worked in like a magazine company one year. I worked in the Vice Chancellor's office on a climate project in the other. Obviously, I did study abroad. They have the year in industry thing now. So there's lots of things you can also add on top of your degree to say, here's all the experience I've got. As well, so I'd say Leicester does quite well in that.
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth mentioning that the year in industry is a new development that we're rolling out for politics and IR. So again, it won't just be a placement in something that's kind of explicitly political, like an MP's office, but there's links with local employers and things that the person who's in charge of the placement is developing, that students will be able to go away and work for a local company and that kind of thing that wants politics and IR graduates. And then that's great for CV building, because you will have done a job effectively, or some work experience before you even have to actually start applying for graduate schemes and so on. Good. Let me just check if there's any questions in the chat. There doesn't appear to be. I mean, if I give you guys a few seconds if someone wants to ask a question quickly, but if not, I suppose we can let you go. Reed, Nelly, did you have anything you wanted to add? I think you've pretty much comprehensively covered most things. I mean, would you say the nightlife of, I know you guys are now sort of at the stage of your uni career where you're maybe not going out quite so much, but is Leicester's nightlife sort of better than you expected, given the fact that it's a sort of smaller size city?
You want to go first, Ellie?
I think it's nice. Obviously, you got the O2, haven't you? And then there's a lot of like events that come to Leicester, like 0 to 100 and stuff like that. So even if you weren't like a regular club goer, you can still go to like specific events throughout the year. And I'm pretty sure as well we can use the DMU student union as well. So there's also you make friends from like other unis that you meet outside of uni. You can then go to their student union, and I think they can come to ours as well, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you know, this is probably I'm probably the worst person to ask on this, because it's become a point of contention on the Society's Council, and I'm the only member who's never been to the O2 before, despite having a free pass to go in now. But for my friends who have, you know, are really big into Leicester nightlife, well, there's a reason they go to the O2 every Wednesday, right? Because they love it. So I'd say Leicester, and you get a lot of people too, from my experience, coming into Leicester, say from Loughborough, for example. You know, there's not a whole lot to do in Loughborough, so they come here a lot of the time. And even if you're not into, say, like, you know, nightlife activities, you might think like the O2, there's lots of other things to do at the night too. And they've just had the massive Diwali celebrations that have been going on, you know, and you know, from 6 till like 12 at night, basically, for almost two or 3 weeks. So there's lots to do in terms of nightlife, even if you're not into that.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, obviously being a member of staff, don't go out that much, and I don't even live in Leicester, but the couple of times I have been out with colleagues for like Christmas celebrations and that kind of thing, and Diwali, I mean, there's actually been really, really pleasant and a really kind of, you know, vibrant atmosphere and so on. So yeah, the city definitely has a lot to offer.
I think it's
right.
the biggest celebration outside of India, isn't it? The Diwali celebration.
Yeah. The Diwali celebration, it's absolutely huge. Yeah. Okay, so there doesn't appear to be any questions in the live event Q&A. So if no one has any questions, thank you very much for coming. I hope that was useful. If you'd like to get in touch about anything, if any questions come to you, just email me, because I'm the admissions tutor, at vv81@leicester.ac.uk, and I'll happily kind of get them answered for you. It might be sort of boring technical questions and so on. That's totally fine. And if it's something more general, that's also totally fine. Please do get in touch. And thank you, Reid and Ellie, for filling us in on the student side of things. It's been really, really useful.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.